Hello and welcome to this week's review, and this time around we're looking at a pair of speakers, stand-mounted speakers from Monitor Audio, specifically, well, the Silver 100s, priced at £799. Now if you shop around and about you may see a little bit of variation, maybe £50 here or there, but generally speaking, on average, £799. Now I looked at the price of these speakers and then I looked at the box and I was intrigued because that box was relatively large, and yes, there's minimal padding in there because the Silver 100s, well, they span 375mm by 230 by 332mm. In terms of weight, well, each speaker weighs a rather healthy 9.4 kilograms, and that's around 21 pounds. So put them on your stands and they will look, at least in relative terms, quite imposing. Now we're snuggling up to more techie information, so I think we should take a closer look. And welcome to the closer look section for the Monitor Audio Silver 100 stand-mounted speakers. And I was talking about presentation, wasn't I? Well, I reviewed the high gloss black finish, as you can see in front of you. But there's other options out there, as you might imagine, including satin white and real wood veneers, such as black oak and natural walnut and ash. These A-tone designs produce a sensitivity of 87 decibels, which means you're looking at an amplifier of around 40 watts or so to produce a decent sound with these things. Looking at the front, and the Silver 100s present a 25mm, that's 1-inch C-cam gold dome tweeter with a uniform dispersion waveguide 2. Plus, just below, there's a 203mm, that's an 8-inch C-cam mid-bass driver using rigid surface technology 2. And yes, an 8-inch driver on stand-mounted modern speakers. That dimension is worth dwelling upon. It's unusual in this day and age, you might say. Swiveling to the rear, we find a, well, I was going to say rifled bass port, probably ridged or ribbed might be more apt. There are also bi-wireable sockets if you need them, and these include the usual brass plates if you just want to hook a single pair of cables. Now, I'm going to keep this section fairly brief because I want to talk more about sound comparisons. So let's nip over to the sound quality tests, shall we? And welcome to the sound quality tests for the Monitor Audio Silver 100s. And let's start with some obscure 80s indie, shall we? Because let's quickly talk about the sound source. From 1986, I play the CD from the band My Dad Is Dead, an unusual name for a band, I know, and the album Peace, Love and Murder on, in this particular case, the German label Houses in Motion. The band, formed by the Cleveland, Ohio man Mark Edwards, would later include band members such as John McEntire, who would form the later seminal band Tortoise. Here I played the bass-heavy, high-energy instrumental Force Feed, and I compared the 100s with the similarly priced Martin Logan 15i speakers that also sport a folded motion tweeter. First impression from the Silver 100s, the bass. The bass from the Silver 100s was completely glorious. Well, for a stand-mounted speaker at this price range it was. That relatively large mid-bass unit produced a wide-ranging, expansive bass response that certainly rocked my listening room, let me tell you. There was no blooming here. Bass never dragged. There was enough precision in the low end to really satisfy. Treble and the upper reaches of the mid-range were not as focused as the Martin Logans, I have to say. The Martin Logans in this frequency area enhanced detail and added much needed texture, while the Silver 100s, well, they rather dispersed this detail, which gave them a slightly foggy sound compared to the Martin Logans. And don't forget, the Martin Logans have this folded motion tweeter. This effect was strengthened when listening to the spoken word performance of the BBC production of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But look, that's domed tweeters for you, especially when you're comparing them to a folded motion tweeter or a ribbon tweeter or similar. When it comes right down to it, I was still happy with the upper mids and the treble performance from the Silver 100s. Nipping back to that indie track now, and this particular music was pressed with a slightly compressed mid-range, but the Silver 100s, well, they handled this sonic wrinkle very well indeed. That is, the mids were very listenable, placed within a spacious soundstage with none of the threatening listening fatigue that some speakers may have given me. Now, the Martin Logans are of a similar price to the Silver 100s. What I did now was go for a slightly more expensive comparison, so I brought in a pair of Spendor A1 stand mounts. These are relatively small, closed box designs. Next, I turned to vinyl and Kilburn and the High Roads 1975 release, Handsome. This was an Ian Jury early band project on the Dawn label. And I played the Rodette song, which offered a reggae beat, a more considered presentation with piano, sax, percussion, bass, some guitar, vocal and harmonies. And how did that sound? Well, again, that bass. Blimey, it was impressive. It was big, meaty, massy, and full of substance. The reggae beat really rocked via the Silver 100s. So how did the upper mids and the treble compare between the Silver 100s and the more expensive A1s, especially because both speakers have domed tweeters? Well, I would say the A1s edged the focus and precision at the very top of the upper mids and across most of the treble. But that difference was far closer than the Silver 100s versus the Martin Logans, with the A1s versus the Silver 100s. Like I say, the differences were there, but not as distinct. So in fact, the monitor audios performed superbly, with delicate cymbal hits producing a detail-rich upper mid-range and treble performance. The sax especially provided a full and vibrant feedback from the Silver 100s, so much so that I could have listened to the sax alone all day. Similarly, the piano sounded impressive because it combined the big bass resonance of the piano chassis with the fragility of the upper mids and treble string hits. Finally, and very quickly, because I recently praised the Technics SB-C600s with a really good bass performance during a recent review, how did they compare to the Silver 100s? Well, in bass terms, imagine you're testing for oil. What do you do when you test for oil? Well, you dig a borehole, which is a very deep, relatively narrow hole. That's your Technics speakers. The monitor audio Silver 100s, well, imagine a valley. So you've got that depth, but you've got an awful lot more breadth. So in effect, the Silver 100s explore more of the bass region, offering a wider examination of the lower frequencies. By comparison, the Technics speakers are rather more laser-like in their bass presentation. They're Very focused, relatively narrow, very impressive, but there is that distinct difference. The Technics has that narrow approach. The monitor audios have that depth, but a lot wider in terms of bass investigation, you might say. The Technics speakers also offered a more controlled suite of mids and treble, again restricting the lateral performance for a more focused output. The Silver 100s, on the other hand, were rather more joyous, rather more emotional in the upper frequencies, pushing both left and right and providing that epic soundstage. So, an interesting suite of comparisons there, I thought. Anyway, how, in effect, should I conclude this review? How shall I bring it to some sort of conclusion? Well, let me give you a few final thoughts, then I'll do some pros and cons, and then we'll have a rating. Now, I've reviewed many speakers under £1,000, some of which are of a similar size to the Silver 100s, but none of them have been quite as fun, I suppose you'd say, as the Silver 100s. That 8-inch mid-bass unit is primarily to blame for that fun. There is something wholly old-fashioned about the sound, but in a good way. Something distinctly 70s-like in that sound. It's big and powerful and packed with wonderful detail. The monitor audio Silver 100s treat music like a celebration. They infuse music with emotion. There's a whole heap of passion and spirit in there. They pull you into the performance and they don't let go. Buy these speakers and believe me, you'll have a blast. Pros and cons. And in the good section, well, you know what's coming. The beefy bass response. I loved this. It was the highlight of this entire review. I thought it was wonderful. Allied with that was the epic soundstage, big and impressive. The mid-range were pretty airy. Yes, they came second place to the bass, but that's expected, I would say, in this particular design. But the mid-range performed very well indeed. Lastly, there was a whole heap of detail available. I was impressed with that too. In the bad section, well, for some people, the size might be just a little bit too imposing for stand mounts. And if I was being super picky, there might be a slight lack of treble focus there. However, I'm not going to let any of that put me off giving these speakers an award-winning rating. The monitor audio Silver 100s are going to get a groovy award, an 8 out of 10. Congratulations to Monitor Audio. And that's it, folks. Thank you very much for staying to the end of this video. And can I ask you, if you haven't done so already, click on the subscribe button and the like button, of course. Further down in the description are links to my Patreon page. If you can support me there, that would be great because it keeps this channel going. It funds this channel. There's all kinds of exclusives over there. You'll also see all of my videos early on Patreon. They are published, as it were, before they appear on this channel. Down there too, in the description, are links to my website and what else is there? My Facebook group, which you're welcome to join. I will be back on Friday for hi-fi news, etc., with lots of goodies, and I hope to have your company at that time. So please join me, won't you? Until that time, folks, bye-bye for now.